we're gonna be planting beans. So exciting. Okay, so what you're gonna need is you're gonna need your pot, you're gonna need your seeds, and you're gonna need your dirt, okay? So in your bag, I gave you 2 seeds. You can plant them both today or you could plant one. I'm just gonna be planting one, okay? So what we're gonna start out by talking about is the sort of things that plants need to grow, okay? So we have our seed right here. So if we think about it, what do plants need to grow? Well, they need dirt, okay? So we need to put a seed into dirt in order for it to grow. Usually about 1 inch into the soil, okay? What else do plants need to grow? Well, they need the sun. They need light, okay? So they take light from the sun to grow, okay? This is our sun.
Nice sun.
Thank you. So what else do plants need to grow? Well, they need
Creatine.
water. Creatine. No, not creatine. Water. Plants need water. That helps them grow as well.
Which is monster plants.
What else do plants need? Well, plants need nutrients. I don't know if you can see this. Okay? Nutrients are just like any kind of substance that a living organism needs to survive. So, our plants need nutrients to thrive. So what they need is they need dirt, they need water, they need sun, they need nutrients, and they also need air, okay? So the air is made up of a couple different particles. One of the important ones is nitrogen, okay? And nitrogen makes up 78% of the air, which is a lot. We don't actually talk about nitrogen very often and how much of it is in the atmosphere, but it makes up a lot of the air, okay? And that's an important part for plants growing. So when our seed is getting water, it's growing. Starts by growing down with the roots, okay? So here our seed is growing down. So it's growing down into the soil. It's growing big roots, and these roots, the more roots there are, the more that they can take up nutrients and water and air and sun. So the more roots, the more water. The more roots, the more nutrients. You get the gist of it, okay? And the more of that, the more they grow. So they keep growing down, and then they start to grow up. And here we have our plant. We will say this is our bean. So it'll start to grow out, okay? It will start to grow that way. Because the bean we're actually growing there are 2 types. There's a bush bean and there is a pole bean. But we're not gonna be growing pole beans. We're gonna be growing bush beans. So they'll kind of grow out. And bush beans are very, very easy to maintain, okay? So first we're gonna look at the bean cycle, like the life cycle of a bean. And then we're gonna kind of talk about how to maintain your beans. So these beans are very, very easy to grow. They're very easy to maintain. It doesn't require a lot to keep them thriving and growing, okay? So you've got a pretty easy starter plant here. Basically, it's a starter plant. So it'll be the building block to your garden if you decide to grow one. So let's start with our bean here. So this is going to be the life cycle. The life cycle of beans. Okay? So first we have our little bean here. So this is where we're going to start. Okay? And then when we give our bean all the things it needs, like the light, the nutrients, the water, the air, then our bean is going to start to sprout. Okay? So that's when the shell cracks open, because if you can see here, and if you actually grab your bean and you touch it, it's got kind of like a hard exterior to it. So that's going to open up. It's going to soften and open up. And then you're going to start to grow the roots, and that's a sprout at that point, okay? And then you're gonna have a couple different stages. This is just like a simple life cycle of a bean, but basically, eventually once it starts to grow more and it starts to grow all its roots and it starts to grow out, then it'll be in the adult stage. And then your bean will start to grow flowers, okay? And then what's gonna happen is these flowers are gonna turn into, it's called the fruit. But basically what it means by the fruit is that these are the beans, okay? So it grows into the beans from the flowers. And then these little beans are inside of the shell. And then this life cycle just starts over. So this little bean will grow into a sprout again if you decide to plant it, and this life cycle just goes over and over and over and over and over again, okay? Just keeps repeating itself. So, a few tips for growing your beans. So these are the things that beans need. Bean tips. Okay. So your beans like warm weather. So they like the warmth, okay? So they don't like it when it's too hot, but they like it when it's warm. So they don't like the humidity. So one thing with your beans is that if you decide to grow them outside, or if you decide to grow 2 in your cup, you have to make sure that you keep space and that eventually you transplant the 2 into dirt. Because if bean plants are growing way too close together, so this is a bush and this is a bush, if they're growing really, really close together, then there's a lot of humidity, so that'll actually kill your plant. Too much humidity is bad for beans. So you wanna make sure that if you decide to grow both of them and you transplant them outside, you leave space between your bean plants, okay? Because they have to be able to breathe. So they like the warmth, but they don't like it too hot and they don't like humidity. So no, not too hot. That is important. Don't wanna overheat your beans. So another thing they like is full sun. And that is an important one because some plants like the shade, some plants like a little bit of sun, but beans like full sun. So you can basically have your bean sitting in a windowsill right in front of the sun, soaking up all the light, and it's gonna be happy as could be, okay? So another thing is you wanna keep, you want your soil to be well drained and you don't want to overwater it, okay? So we'll do well drained soil. So overwatering is a big no-no. See that? Don't overwater. You want your well drained soil. Because, well, actually in the bottom, I'm gonna show you, in your pot, you have a little drainage hole, okay? Because what happens is if you don't have a drainage hole, what's gonna happen to your bean is that all that wet soil is gonna start to your plant's gonna be over moisturized. I don't know what the right word is.
Essentially drowns it, right?
Yeah, so basically what's gonna happen is if you have too much water in there and you don't have well-drained soil or a drainage hole in your pot, is that your plants are gonna drown. So they're basically
photosynthesize, right?
Yeah, they're gonna drown in the water basically, and you're gonna create fungus in the dirt. Like there are little organisms in the dirt that will actually create fungus and grow fungus, and your plant will die. And you can't really recover a plant from, once it grows a fungus, then you can't recover it. Basically, your plant's gonna die on you. So overwatering, do not let that happen. Make sure that you let your plant dry out.
I know Gus is a lot of fun. He's not coming to the bean party.
Dry out before you water again. So in a little bit, once we actually put the dirt and the bean into the cup, once we actually do that step, then I'll show you a little tip to making sure that you're watering your bean right, okay? So you want it to be warm but not too hot, full sun, well-drained soil, and a drainage hole in the bottom. Don't overwater, no overwatering. And basically with that, you want to make sure that it dries out before you water again, okay? So now what we're gonna do is we are going to take our cup, okay? And we are going to start pouring our dirt in there. So I'm going to pour the dirt in there. And if you have clumps, just kind of break it up, okay? And you're just gonna pat it down a little bit, just gently, but not too much. Basically, you don't wanna pat it down too much because with your dirt, you want to make sure that you leave little air pockets in your dirt. So if you pat it down too much, you're gonna kind of suffocate it and all that dirt's gonna be too close together and it's not gonna be able to let air in between the dirt, okay? So just pat it down a little bit, but not too much. And then I'm just gonna leave a little bit more dirt in here because what I'm gonna do, now I'm gonna take my pinky, I'm gonna do about half my pinky, about an inch, and I'm gonna stick it into the soil, make a little hole in there, okay? And then I'm gonna take my bean, I'm just doing one bean, I'm gonna put it right in the center there. And then I'm kind of going to push dirt over top of that, okay? So you can actually add a little bit more dirt in your cup. I didn't put too much, but you can put more in there. But you wanna leave, so this rim here, you don't wanna fill it over that, okay? So then what we're gonna do is, what I recommend before doing this step is taking a cup and putting taking a plate and putting a plate under your pot, because this is gonna get a little bit messy. But now you're gonna take water and you're going to water your plant. So you're gonna water it quite a bit because you want it to be nice and wet for the first water. So do you see how that water is slowly draining, or slowly sinking to the bottom? So yeah, we need some more paper towels. So basically, it's a good sign if it takes, so what you're gonna have happen is you're gonna have the water slowly sink down, and then you're gonna have that water, it's slowly gonna move through all the dirt, and the dirt is gonna suck up that water, but you're gonna have a little bit come out the bottom, okay? I had a lot come out the bottom because I watered mine a little bit before, so now my soil is full of water, so it's not taking up any more water, so I had a lot come out at the bottom here, okay? But what's gonna happen is you're gonna slowly have water come out of the bottom, which is a good sign because it means that your soil is taking up lots and lots of water, which is exactly what we want. And basically the water that's coming out the bottom is just the water that your soil isn't taking up, which means that all the excess water that's going through your dirt is being drained out the bottom, which is perfect because we don't want too much water in our soil, okay? So, now, the trick that I was gonna show you. So basically, when you're watering, so our dirt is soaked and our plant's gonna need lots of water to grow at first, okay? So the trick is the way to know if you need to water your plant or not is you're gonna take your pinky, and you can do this every day, this check. So you're gonna take your pinky and you're gonna dip it about an inch into the soil. So don't put it in the middle where your plant's growing, just do it off to the side. You're gonna dip it about an inch in, and if the dirt is wet, you're not gonna water, okay? But if the dirt is starting to feel like it's dried out or drying out, then you're gonna water, okay? So something that I think is kind of cool about beans is that this is our soil here, okay? And we're gonna draw our bean. There's our bean. Here it is, growing up and out, okay? Sorry, I'm not a very good artist. And we're gonna have our roots growing down. Okay. So there's our roots in there, okay? So remember how I talked about in the air? Plants need air, and in the air there's nitrogen, okay? And then what we have is we have these little bacteria okay, in the dirt. And bacteria aren't always bad, right? Bacteria can be really good. Like we have good bacteria on our skin.
Probiotics.
Yes, probiotics, for example, too. Like a lot of bacteria is healthy. I know that for the most part, we learned that bacteria can make you sick, but it is very beneficial in a lot of
Same
ways.
thing in our bodies, they break down nutrients.
Yeah,
that
so-
we normally can't absorb without those bacteria.
Yeah, so bacteria help us break down nutrients in our body too. So bacteria do a lot of good things. So these little bacteria in the soil, what happens is the nitrogen enters the soil, and these little bacteria make it possible for this plant to take that up. So it's converted to another chemical. That doesn't really matter. What matters is that these little bacteria take up the nitrogen and they make it possible for this plant to take it up, okay? So this is what makes beans so cool. So they take up this nitrogen into their roots, and now they have it all stored in here, okay? So they have it all stored in their roots. And what they can do, they don't do a lot of this, but they do a little bit. So what they can do is they can release this into the soil. And this can actually help other plants thrive as well in your garden, okay? So other plants around it thrive a little bit. So again, it doesn't release a lot, but it releases a little bit, but it does store a lot. So by storing it, it actually helps this bean grow even bigger and stronger on its own just because of these bacteria helping it absorb, take in the nitrogen, okay? And what happens is when your bean dies, it is actually very, very, very beneficial to your garden. So let's say your bean dies, okay? So all of this nitrogen, all of it that's inside, so when it dies, all of this nitrogen that's inside of these little, they're called nodules, it's all released into your soil, okay? So every last bit of it is released into your soil. And what that does is all of that nitrogen, there's so much that's stored in this plant from these bacteria, and from the bacteria converting the air into usable nitrogen for the plant, when it dies, yeah, it releases all that nitrogen into the soil. So you actually have so much released into the soil, and it helps so much with plant growth for other plants. So your garden will flourish so much. So what actually can happen is at the end of the summer, when your bean plants die, all that nitrogen is released into the soil, and actually for next year when you plant your garden, there's still nitrogen in that soil that'll help your garden next year. So beans help your garden a little bit when they're growing, but they also help your garden a lot when they die, okay? So I think that's all I'm gonna talk about. Actually, before I go, so a way that you can tell if your plants have a nitrogen deficiency, which means that they don't have enough nitrogen, is your leaves will yellow and your plant will stop growing. And there are ways that you can actually fix this problem. An at-home thing that you can do is you can actually add coffee grounds to your dirt. So just by putting coffee grounds in your dirt will help with your plant taking up more nitrogen. So yeah, now you know a little bit about beans.